I was 7 months pregnant, standing in a courthouse hallway that smelled like old paper and bad decisions when my husband leaned close and whispered, "You should have known your place," and smiled like he'd already won. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a divorce, it was a lesson he thought he was teaching me. And yeah, that changed everything. Let me back up a little because nothing about this story makes sense unless you understand how invisible I was supposed to be. My name is now Rachel Cole, but back then I was Rachel Harris, the quiet wife, the polite one, the woman people talked over at dinner and forgot 5 minutes after leaving the room. I married Evan Harris 3 years earlier, a man everyone described as brilliant, driven, destined for big things. His family adored him. His friends worshipped him. And me, I was the safe choice, the plain choice, the woman who wouldn't challenge him, or so they thought. Evan ran his family's logistics company, Harris Freight Solutions, a mid-sized operation in the Midwest that had been quietly bleeding money for years. Bad contracts, ego-driven expansions, handshakes instead of lawyers. He came home every night complaining about stress about enemies in the industry, about how unfair it was that things weren't working out. I listened. I nodded. I cooked dinner. I asked careful questions he never answered. What none of them knew, what Evan never even considered, was that I came from money. Real money. Not flashy, not social club money, but quiet capital, the kind that moves behind the scenes. My mother built a private investment firm after my father died, and when she passed, she left it to me. I didn't advertise it. I didn't hide it either. Evan just never asked. He saw what he wanted to see. 6 months before that courthouse moment, Harris Freight was days away from default. Evan didn't tell his family. He didn't tell his board. He definitely didn't tell me. But I knew. I'd been reviewing financials, quietly connecting dots, watching the numbers collapse. So I stepped in anonymously through a shell acquisition and bought the company outright. I refinanced the debt-stabilized operation, saved over 1,000 jobs. Evan came home furious that night, ranting about corporate vultures stealing his legacy. I served him pot roast and listened to him curse my own signature without knowing it. You know what I mean. Then came the pregnancy. That's when everything shifted. Evan grew colder, sharper, started staying out late. His assistant Lila suddenly became essential to every trip, every meeting. I didn't confront him. I watched. I waited. I hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. The affair came out the same week my doctor told me I needed to reduce stress. Evan didn't apologize. He blamed me, said I'd changed, said pregnancy made me less fun, and then he filed for divorce. Fast, aggressive, like he was racing a clock I didn't know existed. Which brings us back to that courthouse hallway. Evan's attorney spoke like I wasn't there. Lila sat behind him, legs crossed, smirking, already wearing the confidence of someone who thought she'd upgraded her life. Evan leaned in and said that thing about knowing my place like he was doing me a favor by explaining the rules after I'd already lost the game. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just asked one question softly. "Do you really want to do this today?" He laughed. Actually laughed. "You don't have leverage, Rachel." That was the moment I stopped protecting him. The judge asked if we were ready to proceed. Evan said yes. I asked for a brief recess. My attorney nodded, made a call, and 10 minutes later the room changed. 3 men in tailored suits entered, followed by a woman carrying a leather portfolio. They didn't rush. They didn't smile. The woman introduced herself as counsel for Northway Holdings, the parent company of Harris Freight Solutions. Evan frowned. Confused. Irritated. She turned to the judge and stated calmly that there were material issues affecting the division of assets given that the primary business in question was no longer owned by Mr. Harris. Silence. Evan snapped his head toward me. What is she talking about? I finally met his eyes. "I own the company," I said. Not loudly, not proudly, just truthfully. He stared like I'd spoken another language. His attorney flipped through documents, color draining from his face. The judge raised an eyebrow. Lila whispered, "What does that mean?" like she was asking about the weather. It meant everything. Evan lost his position that afternoon. His access revoked. His accounts frozen pending review. His family's house purchased through company funds flagged for reassessment. His mother called me screaming an hour later, demanding to know what kind of monster would do this to family. I told her I'd tried being family. She'd made that impossible. The divorce dragged on, ugly and public. Evan tried to paint me as deceptive, manipulative, a gold digger who'd tricked him. Funny how quickly the narrative flips when the quiet one turns out to be powerful. But the paper trail didn't lie. The judge ruled cleanly. I kept what was mine. He walked away with what he earned, which wasn't much. I thought the story ended there. Justice served. Lesson learned. But here's the thing they never tell you. Winning doesn't heal you. It just gives you space to breathe. After the divorce, I moved to a smaller city far from the headlines. I wanted anonymity, normalcy. I found a tiny neighborhood cafe and started going every morning. The owner, a guy named Mark, never asked questions. He just remembered my order, asked how I was feeling, told bad jokes, treated me like a human, not a headline. When my water broke in the middle of that cafe, Mark didn't panic. He locked the door, called an ambulance, held my hand until help arrived. I didn't even know his last name. My daughter was born that night. Healthy, loud, perfect. I named her Hope. Mark visited once, dropped off soup, and disappeared back into his life. No expectations, no angle, just kindness. We became friends slowly. Then, something more carefully. I told him the truth months later, fully prepared to see that look in his eyes, the calculation, the shift. It never came. He just said, "That explains the posture," and went back to making coffee. We didn't rush. We built, honestly, quietly. And 2 years later, I married him in that same cafe, my daughter throwing petals like she'd invented joy itself. Even, he still tells people I ruined him, that I tricked him, that the world's unfair. Maybe it is. Or maybe the world just finally stopped rewarding entitlement. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about it. When someone treats you like you're small, like you don't matter, is it because you are, or because they need you to be? Tell me in the comments. Was I right, or did I go too far? And have you ever watched someone underestimate the wrong person?